Hi, this is Tori, Creative Manager for Premier Yarns, and today we're here to talk about our new kits. This is our Premier Yarns Simple Stitch Knit Set. Each kit includes everything you'll need to make this set, shown here. It comes in a variety of colors, and each kit will indicate which color you have. The kits also include knitting needles, pattern, and stitch markers, tapestry needle, and a tag. We're going to begin by opening up our kit and let's take a look at what we've got inside. Inside each kit, you'll find a printed pattern with instructions and images, and also information about the other kits that we offer. You have enough yarn to complete your project. And for this kit, this is our anti-pilling everyday DK yarn, which features an anti-pilling acrylic fiber. We have our pom-pom maker, and we have our little notions kit. And inside we have stitch markers, and we have our circular needles, as well as our tag that you can sew into your project, like so. And this project, while it does include circular needles, is worked flat. All right, we're ready to get started working on our pattern. So for our set, since today we are making the meadow and fern green set, we're going to find that here so we know what our main color is and our contrasting color is. As you can see, each pair is referred to as a set. So you have main color 1 and main color 2. So that's going to be our green set, main color 2, and contrasting color 2. That's going to be thistle and eggplant. So each set will come with 2 colors. So you will look for your MC and CC within that set. All right, so we're going to begin with the scarf, and you can see here that the pattern includes our stitch and row gauge. For each pattern, the hat is worked in ribbing and stockinette, and the scarf is worked in ribbing. Our skills and techniques used lists everything that is worked in the pattern, so you will understand what skills and techniques we'll be using, and we'll also go over all of those in this video. And our stitch guide includes row by row instructions for the stitches used in the pattern, and as well you will find in abbreviations. We also include instructions there. So we are going to start with the scarf, and as you can see, we need to start with our contrasting color. All right, now we're ready to cast on for our scarf, and I've got our contrasting color here. So I'm going to start with a slip knot, put that on the needle. I'm starting with a slip knot on my needle, and I'm going to be working the long tail cast on today. So this is the yarn tail, and then this yarn going over my index finger is the yarn from the ball. And for the scarf, we're going to cast on 50 stitches total. So the slip knot counts as our first stitch. So you can see I make a triangle basically. This is the tail and this is the yarn coming from the ball. I'm gonna shift my thumb over, lift that up, make a loop, and then pull that yarn through and place it on the needle. And when you are casting on your stitches, you want to make sure not to make them too tight. You want them to be able to move freely and easily on the needle, but you don't want them loose and sloppy. So I like to kind of snug it down a little bit, but not tight. So they're neat and even on the needle, but can still move freely. I'm going to finish casting these on and I'll be right back. I now have 50 stitches cast on and I've got quite a long tail left over, so I'm just going to snip it and leave about 6 to 8 inches, and we are going to weave that in later. So now we are working flat on a circular needle, and you would work just like you would with 2 straight needles. And we are going to begin working in our knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, which is very simple. It's just knit 1, purl 1, and repeat that over and over on both the right side and the wrong side. Knit, purl, knit, purl. And we're going to continue doing that all the way across the row. We've completed our first row, so at this point we're going to continue working in knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. So it's the same thing, knit 1, purl 1. And now that we have our first row established, another way to think of this is knit the knits and purl the purls. So our first stitch is showing as a knit stitch, so we're going to knit that. You can see here you've got that purl bump, and then next to it, when you see the V, that's a knit stitch. So we'll continue knit 1, purl 1 all the way across, and we're going to continue with our contrasting color for 6 inches total. So we are going to continue with our fern green or our CC until the piece measures 6 inches in our knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and I will be back once that's complete and show you how to change colors. All right, I'm ready to measure our portion in the contrasting color, and at this point we are working to 6 inches, and we are there. So at this point we are going to change colors, and we are going to switch over to the main color. And for this scarf, this is again fern green is our contrasting color, and meadow is our main color. So I'm going to cut the contrasting color, and when you cut, you always want to leave at least a 6 to 8 inch tail just to make weaving in those ends easier later on. So now I'm ready to join the next color. So I like to, when changing colors, I've got the new color that we're adding here, and this is our old color. So I'm going to take the new color up underneath the old color, and that just makes it a little more seamless. And so then we're just going to begin working in that new color, and we're keeping the pattern the same. We are still working in the knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and then after a few stitches, I like to hold on. As you can see in the back here, I'm just using my middle finger to hold that main color in place behind to keep everything, keep the tension nice and even. And then after you've worked a few stitches, you can just let that go. Now, something I like to do just to help maintain that, and this is a helpful tip, I always like to, if I need to stop while I'm working, I like to just slide the needles down a little further to make sure I don't drop any stitches. But I'm going to take the 2 stitches, and since they're right at the edge, I'm just going to put a quick little knot here. And this is just going to keep everything nice and neat so I don't have large ends flapping around, and also keep tension on that yarn as we work. So now I'm going to continue on. We're going to work in our knit 1 purl 1 ribbing, and we're going to do this until our scarf measures 74 inches from the cast on edge. So in this, we are always working, measuring from the cast on edge. So I've worked a bit of the main color on the scarf, and I'm going to show you how to bind off now and sew the pocket. But when you are working the pattern, I'm going to show you our finished sample here. After you work the main color section, and that is going to be measured from the cast on edge, at that point you are going to switch back to the contrasting color and work another 6 inches in the contrasting color and bind off. So right now I'm going to show you how we do that, how we bind off loosely in rib. Especially, it can always be difficult to make sure you keep your tension loose. And it can also be difficult when you don't have a larger needle, or if you're trying to keep your stitches even. So I like this method. I'm going to work that first knit stitch, and then our next stitch is a purl stitch. So we're going to bring that yarn to the front, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to slip the back needle into that stitch, and then our front working needle through the front of the stitch, and then I'm going to purl these two together. And then I'm going to continue in that manner. So now my next stitch is a knit stitch. So I'm going to put my left hand needle through the front of the stitch, and then I'm going to slide my working needle up through and through the next stitch as to knit. So now I am knitting those two together. Now I'm going to do a couple more of these slow motion, especially since things got a little slippery there. And then you can see this way keeps these stitches even, but it makes sure they stay nice and loose so you don't end up with your bind off pulling in and creating a very tight edge. All right, now we are ready to sew our pocket. And how we'll do that is we'll fold it up and get it right to the point of that color change. So you want it from the front where you only see the contrasting color. You don't want to fold it up so far that you've got a little stripe of the main color down there. Now it's time to get out our tapestry needle, and this is a great time if you have trouble keeping this in place and want a little extra security. I like to take these locking stitch markers so you can see we've got this folded to where we want it, and this is going to make sure it stays aligned and that it stays aligned on both sides. So we take this and we go through both layers and then lock that in place. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So this is going to ensure that it stays nice and even so that both sides are equal and nothing is out of place. And you can add some additional markers as well if you would like a little bit of added security. They don't need to be too close together. We just want to make sure that it's not shifting around and is staying where you need it while you are seaming. And then as you go along, you'll take them out when you get to that point. And this is also a great time. That seam is going to be a great place to weave in these ends that we've got here. And that'll prevent them from being visible on either side as worn because they'll be hidden inside the pocket. Now we are getting ready to seam. I'm going to thread my tapestry needle with yarn. We have our piece secured with stitch markers, and as I said, and now we are ready. Right, we are going to bring our yarn through from the inside of the pocket to the outside of the scarf, and now we want to make sure that we are only have one stitch. So when we're doing this corner initially, we want to get a few stitches before we pull tight. Because that corner can be a little tricky to start. You can see there once we pull tight, gets that corner nice. So sometimes I like to pull this stitch, and then don't worry about these guys getting a little messed up because they're going to be on the inside anyway. And after the first few, I like to switch over to grabbing 2 running threads, since now we're not making that tight turn. We can have our stitches a little more spread out. So you can see when we pull it tight, it's going to line these 2 knit stitches up right next to each other and make it look like one seamless piece. Keep that seam nice and invisible, and it'll look like one solid piece of knitting. You can see I'm still just grabbing that running thread, and we're making sure that we're staying in that same column and continuing up. And you're going to continue this way until we get to the top of the pocket, pulling tight. So I'm going to finish this seam, and then I'm going to show you a couple quick ways just to weave that end in to that seam. All right, so now we have gotten to the top and we have, there we go, pull it tight. Now we have completed our seam. So what we're going to do, I'm still coming out the side, I like to take it, there we go, I like to take it back through to the side, pull that tight. So it's just going to help secure us down, and then I'm going to take this end and do the same thing with it. But weave that in, you can just turn it inside out, and you can work your way through the bumps on this side. I like to do down one side the stitches and then come up on the other side. When you're weaving in ends, you always want to have a sharp turn, because that helps prevent unraveling and keeps them from being in a straight line. All right, I'm ready to cut this guy. I don't anything else. Do that, and we can always trim that down a little more later. And I'm going to get that other end, and this is the leftover end from our cast on. We're gonna thread this through, and I'm gonna do the same thing, just kind of take this right through, lock it down, and then get over to this side, work my way in and out, and I like to go through the actual stitches. There's a couple different ways you can fully trace the stitch, like a duplicate stitch. You can do like I am, where I'm kind of weaving around the outside, and then I'll turn around and then Another really great way to secure is to make sure that you're stabbing actually through the plies of the yarn, and that helps secure really well also. And then I'll give this guy a trim, and then we have our seam all set. And then you're going to repeat that for the other side of this pocket, and then for the other end of your scarf. So you will have your two pockets seamed. And then next we are going to get ready to start the hat. We are ready to get started on our hat. So we check here, we've got 3 sizes for the hat. There's the adult small, medium, and large. And we have the hat circumference here. Now, something to keep in mind with a hat is you usually want to choose a size that is slightly smaller than your head, so it has a little bit of negative ease. That just makes the hat fit closely and keeps it on your head. If you prefer a slouchier, looser hat, by all means go up a size from what your head measures. My head measures 21 inches, so I would usually choose between the small and the medium, dependent on what I was going for. If I wanted a tighter fitting hat that wasn't going to move around and fit close, I would choose a small. But if I want something loose and casual, I would go with medium. So today I'm going to choose the small, and that means for the hat, we're back to our contrasting color. Let's turn this guy around. We are back to our contrasting color in fern green, and we are going to cast on 104 stitches for this. And again, we are not joining to work in the round. This hat is worked flat. So we're going to cast on and work the entire hat, and then we're going to seam it, and we're going to use mattress stitch just like we used for the scarf pockets. So since we are making the small today, I'm making the small, I am going to cast on 104 stitches. I'm just going to give you a quick look at me casting on a few stitches. I always start with the slip knot. Again, I keep the tail over my thumb and the yarn from the ball over my index finger, and I am doing the long tail cast on. And our slip knot is going to count as our first stitch. We're just going to cast these on. And again, we're making sure that they are snug, but not tight. We just want them snug and even, but we want them to be able to freely move on the needle. Number one, that's for ease of knitting, because it's never fun to have to wrestle to get your stitches to move along the needle. And also for comfort wearing. If your cast on is too tight, it's going to be just a really thin, tight band, and it's going to be right on your forehead. So we want to make sure that we keep it loose so it allows that 1x1 rib to stay nice and stretchy. And then there, if you mess up, we just pop it off and reconfigure ourselves. Again, we want the tail over our thumb and the yarn from the ball over our index finger. We've got our little triangle. All right, I have my 104 stitches cast on. I'm ready to start working in knit one, purl one ribbing. And this is going to be exactly the same as how we work the scarf. It is just knit one, purl one all the way across, but for this, it's not going to be nearly as much ribbing. We're just going to work this band until it measures 2 inches from the cast on edge. And I'll be back to show you how we change colors and then switch over to working in stockinette stitch. All right, we have finished our band because we have worked to 2 inches. Now the last thing we've got to do before we switch over to the main color, we've got 1 stitch left, and we're going to increase by 1 before we change colors by working a knit front and back into this last stitch. And how we do that, so I'm going to knit into the front and then pull that loop through and then knit into the back of that stitch. We've just increased our stitch count by 1 stitch. And that is 105 stitches for the small, 113 for the medium, and 121 for the large. All right, so now I'm turning and I'm going to cut our contrasting color. Again, leaving that tail to weave in later. And I am getting ready to join the main color. And in the main color, we are going to work in stockinette stitch. So we're doing this just like we did with the scarf. I'm hanging on to the yarn in the back to help me keep that tension, and I'm just going to start knitting. So this is going to be the right side of the piece. So on this side, we will knit every stitch. And then once we get to the wrong side, we will purl. So stockinette stitch is always knit on the right side, purl on the wrong side. I am just finishing up that first right side row in stockinette stitch. So I knit every stitch across in our main color. I'm going to turn to the wrong side. And for this row, we are going to purl every stitch across. And you will continue in this manner until we get to the crown shaping. So we're going to knit on the right side, purl on the wrong side until the hat measures 6 inches for small, 6.5 inches for medium, or 7 inches for large from the cast on edge. So again, we're going to be measuring from the beginning where we cast on for that measurement. We have completed the first section in stockinette stitch for our hat, and now we are ready to shape the crown. And on our first row, we are going to be placing our markers. So what you want to do is take your markers and close them all off. So we will be able to put them right on to the needle. All right, I've got all my markers closed and ready to go. So we're going to start our crown shaping with a right side row and going to work the number of stitches indicated for our size. Again, I'm making the small, so I'm going to work 13 stitches. And if you are making a medium, you would work 14, and the large, you would work 15. So I'm just going to get those 13 stitches. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Then going to place a marker. And you are going to continue in this manner. You can see I have all 8 of my markers placed, and these are going to indicate where we are going to be working our decreases for our crown shaping. So I'm going to work my wrong side row and then come back and show how we work that decrease row. All right, we've worked our wrong side row after placing our markers, and we are ready to work our first decrease row. And so for this row, we are going to knit to 2 stitches before the marker and then work a knit 2 together. We'll get this. All right, and here we are. So here's our marker, here's our 2 stitches, and we're going to work a knit 2 together. And so we've just decreased that section by 1 stitch, and then we slip the marker and continue on to the next marker, and we're going to work in this manner all the way across this row, knitting to 2 stitches before the marker, working a knit 2 together, and then slipping that marker all the way until we get to the last stitch, and that is just a knit 1. So here we are, we're 2 before the marker, knit 2 together, and then slip that marker. I like to keep them on the front so they don't get tangled up in the yarn. So I'm going to work our first few decrease rows, and I'm going to come back and show you, because after we complete 4 more reps of this, we're going to switch to decreasing on both the right side and the wrong side rows. Now we have completed our crown shaping through row 13. So we have been doing all of our decreases on the right side row so far. And now on row 14, we are ready to start our decreases on the wrong side row as well. So, and this one is going to be worked a little differently. We're going to be placing the decreases in the same place that they're placed on the right side. So I'll show you. We're going to start with our purl 1, our slip marker. So each time after we slip that marker, our first stitch is going to be our purl 2 together, decrease. So that's going to stack on the knit 2 together from the right side. Keep my yarn in place. So then we will purl to the next marker, we'll purl to the next marker, flip marker, and then purl 2 together. And now we're going to continue like this, repeating rows 13 and 14 2 more times after the first set. All right, so I'm ready to work my last row of crown shaping. I already did my first knit 2 together, and then on this row, as I go along, I'm going to take off each marker as I come to them, because this is going to be our last row. All right, so I have finished my decreases. I have 9 stitches remaining, and at this point we are going to cut our yarn, and we're going to leave a long tail because we are also going to use this tail. First, we're going to thread it through our live stitches to close them off, and then we're going to use the remainder of the tail to seam the side of our hat, and we're going to be using mattress stitch again. So I'm going to get this cut and get this threaded onto my tapestry needle and show you how to do that. All right, so I've got my tail threaded onto my tapestry needle, and we are going to run this tail through our live stitches. You do this just as if you were flipping a stitch from needle to needle. So we're going to get all of these stitches onto our tapestry needle, and then we can put our circular needles aside. And then we're going to pull this, make sure we don't drop any of those stitches. So this is going to fasten off the top of our hat. And then don't worry about pulling it too taut just yet, because we do still have to get going with our mattress stitch here. And we are going to be working this just like we worked for the pocket of our scarf. And again, so we're coming out right here on this stitch, and then we want to make sure we leave that whole stitch. So I've got my first running thread here, and I'm also going to do this similar to how we started the pocket on the scarf, where the first few I am only going to pick up 1 running thread, and then once we get out of this tight area, I'm going to then switch over to picking up couple running threads at a time. You can see here, I've just got that one running thread. So now at this point, I'm ready. I'm going to pull it a little tighter so we can close this up a bit. So you can see I didn't pull it all the way tight. There's still a little give in here, but I'm going to get a few more stitches going before we do that. So here we go. Now I'm going to switch over doing 2. And if you find it a little difficult with this long tail, what you can do is thread it further through your needle so it's doubled a little longer, but just remember as you get closer to the bottom you may need to let it out a little bit. And we're going to continue in this column of stitches here, and then every few stitches we're going to pull it tight, and I am picking up 2 running threads per. And sometimes if you get a little, I like to kind of work my fingernail under there, help me keep that edge open and prevent it from rolling too much. We've got a few here. I'm going to pull it tight, and I'm also going to take this opportunity to pull it tight enough to close that hole. You don't want to pull it too tight because we don't want the seam to ripple and end up too tight, but we just want to pull it firm so we close that little opening in the top, and then we can continue on down the hat, and we're going to keep going all the way down and also past the ribbing. We are just going to keep going all the way down, and I am going to come back once I've got that complete, because once we've sewn the seam, we are going to make our pom-pom and attach it to the top of the hat. All right, we've finished seaming our hat, and now it is time to make our pom-pom. So our pom-pom maker includes instructions on how to make your pom-pom. And I'm also going to go through and show you how to do that. And for our hat, we are going to be making our pom-pom in the contrasting color. So we want to open the pom-pom maker. Now it's up to you. You can have them both sides open when you're making it, or if it's easier to hold on to, you can leave one side tucked in as you work the other. That's the way I usually do it. It's just personal preference. So what we want to do is get our yarn here, and we're just going to hold it with our finger on the other side. So eventually we can trap that end down. So then once that's trapped, we are just going to keep going around and around. And you want to keep going until it is nice and full. Right. Switch sides. Here we go. That's a little better. So you can see if it's tucked in, you can kind of just use this to grip and then go around. And you don't really have to be perfect with this. It does make for a slightly more even pom-pom when you're done, but we're going to trim it anyway. So sometimes just whatever it takes to get that yarn wrapped around there. So I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to come back and show you when this one side is as full as I like to do it. All right, you can see we've got a nice thick um, layers of yarn around the first half of the pom-pom maker. So now I'm going to close this one, and you want to make sure if you are leaving one open and one closed, you always want to end at the part where you lift. So I'm going to put that down because then I can take the yarn right over here to the second half. Now we can just continue wrapping on the second half. All right, so we have finished wrapping. I'm just going to get my yarn to the end there and then close that. And then we are going to we've got it to the end and shut it. And now we are going to cut our yarn. You don't really need to worry about how long you cut this piece because it's going to become part of. All right, we are now set to cut our pom-pom. And for this, I actually like to use a larger pair of scissors instead of small trimming scissors, because this sometimes it's a tight space. So it's easier when you've got more leverage of the larger scissors. Plus, sometimes if any little pieces slip down on there, that's where our little scissors come in handy. Get another piece of yarn. And this doesn't have to be super long, but we do want some tails because this is also how we're going to both tie off the pom-pom with this piece, and this is also how we're going to fasten it to the crown of our hat on that. So I'm going to get just a little bit of wiggle so I can get this piece of yarn. And I'll get this guy. We want to be able to get that piece of yarn in between here. And now that we are there, and again, just slightly wiggle apart as needed to get fully in between those two discs there. And then I'm going to place it down and I'm going to tie a knot, a second knot. I believe this is a box knot, but I'm not quite sure, but that's just the knot that I always do for pom-poms. So you want to make sure that's tight and pull it tight, but we want to make sure that we are not going so tight that we end up snapping the yarn. And we are ready to open this up. So open this side, and then grab our white pieces and just flip them apart. And then this is how, when it comes apart, this is what it looks like. You just flip it back together, and then it's ready for next time. And then here is our pom-pom. So I like to give it a little shake. This kind of gets everybody sorted, and then we are ready to trim. So what you want to do, and you can see when you really wrap it densely, it already comes out really nice and fluffy. So what we're going to do at this point is just trim off any of these long guys that are poking out, just so it's nice and even and rounded. All right, our pom-pom's got a nice haircut, and we are ready to attach this to the top of our hat. I'd like to thread these two ends in separately because we are going to tie them in to the top of the hat. So I'm going to get this on the tapestry needle. And then we're going to do this just slightly off center. I'm going to get that first end in. And then we're going to do the same for the second, do it slightly next to that one. Want it basically to straddle the crown closing of the hat. So they're not right next to each other. That'll give them a little bit of meat of the hat to basically attach to, make it nice and tight and firm to the crown. So you could see on this side too, that we're basically just straddling where we had that crown. And these are my ends that we're going to weave in later, but for attaching the pom-pom at this point, we are just going to do the same knot that we did to tie off the pom-pom. It's like a regular slip knot, but I wrap twice and then double knot it. And then we're going to cut this. And as with all things, when you do have a knot in yarn, it's always good to leave some extra ends and then just weave them in. That provides a little bit more security, because sometimes if you cut a little too close to the knot, it can work itself loose. So everything is just about making sure that it is nice and secure. So here we go. we have got our nice, dense, fluffy pom-pom attached to the crown of our hat. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed learning how to create your own hat and scarf with our simple stitch knit set.